Hello, hello, what is up, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls? Welcome back to a brand new episode of the Mr. Clutch Sportscast. It is I, your humble host, Mr. Clutch, and as always, I'm coming to you from the bunker. Um, so I realized I should have put out a housekeeping announcement for my relative disappearance the last few weeks. let me run it down real quick here before we get into the video. Uh, I went on vacation for a week, like 3 weeks ago. Came back, and I was gonna do a video that weekend, kind of do a double, double header, if you will. Pardon the sports pun. Um, but for whatever reason, I just wasn't feeling it last week, or again, however many weeks it was ago. It was either a week or two ago, and I don't know. Like I say, I don't know what happened. I just got back from the vacation. I was gearing up for videos, and all of a sudden, I wasn't feeling it that week. So I thought, you know what, put it off another week. You know, get your groove back and kind of build momentum into some episodes and see what happens. So I am here back with you guys, and today I am doing a double header. This is the first of two videos. This one is a follow-up to the last video that I did, basically detailing how you should draft fantasy football teams. And if you haven't watched that video yet, you should stop watching this, go back, watch that video. It's a bit of a long one, as they all usually are. But you should go back, watch that video, and then come back to this video so you can be caught up on everything and know where we are. So, I wish I had the comments still, because I would read it to you guys and also give credit. But if you're watching this, you know who you are. Unfortunately, I don't remember your name or your YouTube name. But thank you for the comment. This video is for you, whoever made that comment. But basically, the comment was, what do you mean by drafting on the trend? And also he asked about reaching for players, if you felt so compelled. Basically, before we get into like the two questions, reaching for a player means drafting a player in a round that's higher. Basically, you value a player so much, you draft him higher in the draft order because of that value that you've placed on him. Give you an example. One year I drafted Kirk Cousins in the first round. This was back when he was with Washington. I think it was like the third or fourth overall pick. Now, this is back when I had no idea what I was doing. But, again, sorry, got distracted. But I reached for Kirk Cousins. And he had an okay year, but it wasn't enough to constitute a fourth overall pick or third or whatever it was. I know it was in the first round. But yeah, actually I placed way too much value on quarterbacks at the time, because I think I went Kirk Cousins first round, Russell Wilson second round. Yeah, so I learned from that mistake. Don't draft quarterbacks in the first round unless they have unreal numbers the year before. It's probably a good practice anyways, but still. Now, on to the legit questions. Actually, whatever. Anyways, so, what do I mean by draft on the trend? What I mean by that is you can go into a fantasy draft with a set strategy, or with a strategy that you'd like to employ. Let's just run through the first 4 rounds real quick. Say you want to draft a running back in the first round, wide receiver in the second round, tight end in the third round, and quarterback in the fourth round. Right? That's your strategy for the first 4 rounds. Say you get into the draft and you start to see Julio Jones, Antonio Brown, Odell Beckham Jr., high tier wide receivers come off the board within the first 5, 7, even 10, round picks. Or, sorry, first 10 overall picks. If it's within the first 10, you should be okay, because depending on how many teams are in your league, sometimes there's only 10 teams in a league, so there's only 10 picks per round. So, part of this depends on your league. But let's say it's a 12-team league, and Julio Jones, Antonio Brown, and Odell Beckham Jr. come off the board within the first 6 to 8 picks. If you feel compelled to, don't be afraid to adjust your strategy. Like if you were going to draft, who's a really high quality running back right now? Todd Gurley. If you were going to draft Todd Gurley in the first round, but you see a lot of the wide receivers coming off the board very, very early in the first round, don't be afraid if you feel like the wide receivers are going to come off really quick to go get those wide receivers, or to get a high quality wide receiver. With wide receivers, it seems like there's a few more of them that are high quality, or that qualify as high quality fantasy performers, than there are running backs and tight ends, which is amazing. But it's amazing for the running back perspective, not the tight end. But regardless of all that, don't be afraid to adjust your strategy based on what you're seeing in your draft. And this goes for anywhere in your draft. Say you're in the 7th round, and you start to see good backup tight ends come off the board. Guys like Jimmy Graham, now that he's not in his heyday. I honestly don't know. Let's just say you start to see some backup tight ends come off the board, and you start to get concerned that you're not going to have a high quality, or you're not going to have a guy who will get 5 points for your tight end spot when you have to bench Travis Kelce because of a bye week. By the way, that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm starting Travis Kelce 15 out of 16 possible weeks. Or 16 out of 17, whatever. You get the point. If you have a strategy that you're not going to draft a tight end until the 9th round or whatever, until a later round, we'll say that, don't be afraid to go up and get a tight end who's going to get you a fairly decent number of points when you have to bench your starter. Now, that kind of plays into reaching. And I think the answer to whether somebody should reach for a player or not is really up to that person who's drafting. I know it's not very profound, and it's not very hot takey, if you will, but honestly, it depends on how much you value that player and what your team looks like at the time. Now, if it's first round, reaching's a little bit different because you don't have, 7, 8 rounds in front of you, even 3 or 4 rounds in front of you, to decide, okay, what do I need am I just looking for depth, or do I really, really need this position to be strengthened because I have a thin core at that group? That's honest. That's my honest opinion. I think that's something that you have to decide in the middle of your draft if that situation arises. Um, if you feel in your gut that Patrick Mahomes is going to be off the board by the second round or by the end of the second round, then I personally would pull the trigger on Patrick Mahomes in the second round. If I had a good running back in the first round and Patrick Mahomes in the second round, I would consider that a win, even if it wasn't a part of my original strategy. But yeah, honestly, reaching is difficult to define until you get into the season and you start to see the numbers come in. You start to see their average weekly points. You know, it's hard to say. People will say that, oh, that's a reach just out of reaction, but it's really tough to say if it's a reach. Now, if you pick Patrick Mahomes in the second round and somebody picks up Zach Ertz or Travis Kelce right behind you, and you miss out on a, top 3 or 5, whatever, tight end, you might have some problems there, and that could be considered a reach. But again, I think it's based on ultimately your team, what you have in your roster, unless, again, if it's very, very early in the draft and you only have a round or two under your belt. But in situations where you've got 3, 4, 5 or more rounds under your belt, it just depends on your team, what you need, what you have a lot of depth at, and what you feel that you need more depth in. Again, if it's very early in the round, or if it's very early in the draft, what may be considered a reach could, at the end of the season, be the reason you win an NFL fantasy championship. Or whatever league you play in, ESPN, NFL, DraftKings, whatever. Yahoo Sports could be that reach, could be the reason you're in the championship and you win a championship. So I think when it's early in the draft, you just kind of have to make a gut decision. If there's certain players that you think may be gone by a certain time in the draft, then that's kind of your risk reward for fantasy football. I don't know. Now, if that player that you reached for goes on to have a terrible year and you end up dropping him in the middle of the season, yeah, that was a reach. But again, it's tough to say really until the numbers come in and you start to see, okay, this is what they're doing on a weekly basis, this is their average. This pick was worth it, this pick was so-so worth it, this pick was a bust. That's when you can really decide whether something was a reach. Do I personally think it's okay to reach in certain situations? Yes. If you see either Travis Kelce, Zach Ertz, or George Kittle come off the board in the first, second round, yeah, go get a tight end. Go get an Ertz or a Kittle or a Kelce or whichever one of those three are still available. It's tough to say because each position is different and has different numbers of, elite fantasy performers. But if I were in a position where somebody drafted Zach Ertz in the first round, I would be very tempted to pick up a tight end in the first round, a Travis Kelce or George Kittle. And if I didn't draft him in the first round, you better be darn well sure that I would be drafting him very early in the second round. And sometimes you just can't help it. You feel like you have to make a move based on where you're positioned in the draft, because they're auto-assigned when you actually go into draft. When you do your own mock draft, or when you go into a mock draft, you can pick which spot you want to be in. That's not the case in actual fantasy drafts. At least not on NFL Fantasy or ESPN. You can't pick which spot you want to be in, it's automatically assigned. So, sometimes, based on your position in the draft, based on who's available, based on who's gone already, that could constitute a reach also. So, bottom line is, there's a few different factors. And in the end, it's ultimately up to whoever's drafting as to whether or not they want to, go out and get a player who most people wouldn't draft in that round, but due to circumstances, you feel like you have to. That's something you have to decide in draft. And unfortunately, mock drafts really don't simulate that all that well. So, something to be aware of, for sure. And I hope this answers your question or questions. If it doesn't, I'm very tempted to do another one of these. So, well, I shouldn't say I'm very tempted. I'm very open to doing another one of these sort of in-depth explanation videos. So, let me know in the comments below if this helped or if this will help you. Also, if any of you have had fantasy drafts yet, let me know down below. Let me know how they went. I'd love to see if, my tips helped. Or if you just want to talk about your lineup. That's cool too. So, this is, like I said, this is the first video tonight. I'm going to be making another one here in a little bit. It's going to be more football, but it's not going to be tips. It's more player-oriented. So, stay tuned for that, for sure. And until then, like this video if you gave it give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. Also, subscribe down below if you want to see more content like this, or just more content in general, because I've been gone for 3 weeks. And again, comment. Also share with your friends and family, complete and total strangers. That works too. Whatever floats your boat. Until next time, as always, stay clutch, people.